So how do the students themselves feel about Vice President Lai's idea of subsidies for private university students? On Thursday, an NGO devoted to equal rights in higher education held a press conference where students praised the Executive Yuan for slashing private university and college tuitions. They added, however, that the government hadn't taken this nearly far enough, citing other significant obstacles they faced, such as massive student loans.
Holding placards and chanting slogans, this group of young people who care about equal rights in higher education are delighted to see that ahead of the legislative and presidential elections, some candidates are directly putting forth policies that tackle youth issues.
As soon as I graduated, I was burdened with student loans of 400,000 NT. Equality in education funding, I think, is a common responsibility and ideal of society and the nation. I hope that in future my fellow students won't have the same heavy burden of debt that we do. Students may abandon their ideal faculty in a private university because public university tuition fees are cheaper. This policy can effectively resolve the problem of students' rights to select suitable higher education.
However, the group has even more demands of the government, including improving the quality of education at private universities, prudently planning for a mechanism for retiring universities that can't find sufficient students, and reducing students' accommodation costs.
Tuition fees and other miscellaneous expenses come to about 100,000 NT each year. What still needs to be included is if students from out of town need accommodation expenses. We hope that the three presidential candidates can pay attention to the problems of economic pressure on students regarding student loans and other issues.
The DPP's presidential candidate, Vice President Lai has proposed to bridge the gap in tuition fees between public and private universities. Shortly after this, the Executive Yuan approved 35,000 NT in subsidies per head annually for private university students. Opposition parties have criticized the government for throwing money around before an election and say it amounts to a vote-buying policy. The students had this to say in response.
This issue is not a kind of vote-buying policy, and we need to face it squarely. Even though I myself may have many doubts about this policy, for example, the supporting measures need to be improved, I believe this policy in itself is good. Calling it a vote-buying policy is an extremely cheap shot, because as long as all your policies are beneficial to people, they could be said to be vote-buying. For a long time, young people have felt that politicians seem to be very far away from them. So I think it's very good to see even more policies that directly impact youth get on the agenda of everyone's discussions.
The group hopes that the political mudslinging over Lai's plans to reduce tuition fees will not obscure the real need for reform. The hearts of youth can only be won over with practical policies.